Hey everyone, how are we doing? And welcome to this bonkers build guide. Today it's all about price performance, which is my favorite because if you're after a gaming PC that is going to get you everything you want, so we're talking about ultra settings, smooth frame rates, being able to play pretty much every game available under the sun, which I suppose is all games because we all live under the sun. Today's video is pretty much all centered around this CPU. It is the i5-10600K from Intel. This is a 6-core processor, so it's not as crazy high-end as something like a Ryzen 9 or an i7 or i9, but to be honest, if you're building a gaming PC, then you don't really need any more than 6 cores unless you're going to be doing things like streaming or other more intensive tasks. Importantly, it's going to clock very highly and make sure that our games run their absolute best. In terms of the motherboard that we're using, this one is from MSI. I like the fact that the carbon is very aesthetically pleasing. It is very color neutral, so you can use this in a whole host of builds, but it also has the feature set that you're going to need for a very strong gaming PC for years to come. So you've got things like USB-C, for example, which is very useful these days. You've got plenty of support for PCIe SSDs, whole host of different ports, and I always like the fact that they come with a large amount of fan headers, which is very useful if you're building a high-end PC and want to upgrade it in the future. Moving on to the GPU, I'm always most excited about these things. This is one that PowerColor actually sent out a couple of weeks ago. It is the 5600 XT. This is an AMD Radeon graphics card, so no NVIDIA in sight, and they're great value. They're going to give you fantastic price performance, which is of course the whole theme of this build. The PowerColor cards I like because they are very efficient in terms of not only how they perform, but also in terms of cost. You're not paying for the highest end brands, but you're not really losing anything in terms of aesthetic or performance. I love that. Moving on to the cooler, we've not really gone for anything too crazy. The Hyper 212 was always one of the most popular coolers on the market, really. It's from Cooler Master. This one is a little bit more expensive. It's the RGB Black Edition, so you have a little bit more in terms of looks, I guess, but the performance on this I think is slightly better as well than the old 212. They're constantly evolving over time, and unless you're going to be doing any crazy overclocks, I don't think you're going to need any more than this. We do also have some additional fans from Corsair. These are the SP120s or the SP120s Pro, but you should bear in mind that with RGB fans, these are the last things that I would say add into your build. They definitely make it look a whole lot better, but it's very easy to upgrade it later, and if you're skimping on something like maybe the graphics card or the processor, it is not worth spending that money on the fans. Bear that in mind. We are going for some pretty fancy RAM though. This is the 3600 megahertz RAM from XPG. This is the Spectrix D60G. This is RGB. It's really good looking stuff actually. Only 16 gigabytes, but that should be more than we need really for any gaming PC, and RAM is so easy to upgrade. You can just stick another 2 sticks in later if need be. Interestingly, we have also gone for our PCIe SSD in this, and that's because I think in terms of price performance, this is something that you're going to want to invest in at the start of your build because you're going to put Windows on it. It gets very complicated to migrate everything across at a later date, and they're not really that much more expensive than SATA drives these days, and they do make a decent difference to things like responsiveness, app load times, all of that good stuff. So if you can grab one of these, I would recommend it. My top tip would probably just be to go for a normal NVMe SSD, whack it under one of the heat sinks, and then go for some fancy fans. But I'm not knocking you if you want to go for RGB SSDs. They do make your motherboard pop. That would be bad actually, wouldn't it, if your motherboard pops? You plug it in and it goes bang, pop. But popping off to the right hand side of the table, that's a great link there for our power supply. This is 650 watts, which is definitely the right sort of wattage for a build like this. You're not going to need any more. Are you magically going to want to put a 2080 Ti in SLI? Probably not. It's rated bronze for efficiency, so we're saving a bit of money. It's not the highest end thing in the world, but I like the fact that this is about as low down as you can go in terms of modularity without losing any functionality, because all of the cables that you're definitely going to use aren't modular, so you're saving a bit of money there, but all the ones that are optional on your PC are actually optional, so you don't have to put them in, and you can save a little bit of time with cable management. So let's get this table a little bit tidier and start the build. But first, a quick word from this video's sponsor. ASUS and the ROG Theta. This is a gaming headset unlike any other, with true 7.1 surround sound for precise audio placement that really will let you achieve that game-winning play. ROG's home theatre grade DAC and Essence drivers deliver exceptional audio quality, with sublime clarity and thunderous bass. It's comfortable, surprisingly lightweight, and it works across all of your devices thanks to USB Type-A and Type-C connectivity. Check it out with the link down below. Wow, that was a lot lighter than I thought actually. This case is very budget friendly. It's from a brand I've never actually heard of before, and I don't know how you're supposed to say it. Abconcore, I think. Abconcore. But I thought it'd be a bit interesting to do something that wasn't just, you know, like a Fantex, a Fractal, a Corsair case, and something a little bit more obscure. So this then is the Kronos, and it is a mid-sized case. You can see it's not too big, it's very light. There is no tempered glass, it's a standard acrylic panel, which wouldn't really bother me, but might bother you, bear that in mind. But get started we shall, and we don't need the case for this. We should always build on top of the motherboard box, as you guys will probably know by now. So to install our CPU, we are gonna simply grab it out of the box, grab this little lever that's down here, and then we just simply drop down the CPU into place, then just lower down the cover. This bit requires a little bit of force, but nothing too excessive. PCIe SSD, very, very straightforward. Here we've got two slots, one right down at the bottom, one right at the top. Take off that PCIe cover, and then really important, make sure you take off this little cover, I guess, or the protective film. Then you just need to grab our XPG SSD, put it into our slot like so, and then lower it down. RAM is actually a little bit easier because you don't need any tools whatsoever. If you've only got two sticks, your motherboard will tell you which DIMMs to occupy first. Find the little groove on our RAM. Don't worry too much if you get this wrong, because it should be pretty obvious, and then push it down until it's in place. Installing the CPU cooler is incredibly simple. You're going to need these two bits. You've got the Intel mounting backplate, which goes underneath the motherboard and pushes through, and then this hooks directly onto the cooler itself, and this is what allows it to sort of grip onto the processor and then not move about. All I've done so far really is just grabbed the Intel mounting hardware from inside the box, and I've then screwed this onto the cooler directly. You can add an additional fan. All of the mounting hardware for that is supplied in the box, but for now we're just leaving it with one. If you're going to overclock or something like that, probably should grab another fan, but just using the CPU, this is all you're really going to need. Then you just need to grab your motherboard, turn it upside down, and you should see around the back that slides in, and then the holes poke through to the other side. Little screws that go onto the motherboard. Now this is the point in the video where I need to talk to you about how important it is to actually apply thermal paste to your CPU, otherwise you're going to run into a whole bunch of issues. And it's so easy to forget to do this, I just forgot to do this. All you need to do is grab the thermal paste that comes included in the box, add a very small pea-sized amount, grab a screwdriver and screw the 4 points into their respective places. And then the last thing to do is actually make sure that the fan is connected but blowing air in the correct direction, as you don't want to sort of have all of your case fans blowing one way and then your cooler doing something completely different. Currently this fan is set up to blow this way. You can tell because the label is facing yourself. Plug the fan into the header that's labeled CPU fan 1. And with all of that out of the way, it's now time for the exciting bit, which is actually starting this build off properly. So grab your case, take the side panel off. Before we put our motherboard in, I have noticed that there are a couple of standoffs missing from our case. I say missing, I'm sure this is by design. And I'm talking about these little holes here. So all you need to do really is just grab your little bag of goodies that come inside your case, find the extra standoffs, and then line them up with the corresponding holes. There were only 3 here to screw in. If you do have pliers, it's a good idea to make sure they're as tight as you possibly can. Ignore my previous rule of not over tightening anything, just because in the past I've had experiences where you come to remove the motherboard and the screw almost gets stuck. Then just grab your screwdriver, the appropriate screws that were in that little bag of goodies, and start to screw everything down. It's got stuck in the motherboard. That's gonna be a pain to remove. While we're here, you've probably noticed that there's quite a mishmash of different cables that are coming off of the case. Most of these will actually plug in down the bottom, so it's quite a good chance to plug all of them in now. Oh dear, dear, Abcon Core, you've lost some points because your front panel connections are not quite long enough. Once you are here though, these tiny little cables can be a little bit tricky to plug in, and if you do get these wrong, your PC might not power on because power switch needs to be in the right place. It's always worth having a look in your motherboard manual because this tells you exactly what headers do what and what you need to plug in where. If you don't get your PC powered on in the first instance, this is probably the first place I would go to make sure you've done everything correctly. This massive cable here is normally bright blue, and this represents our USB 3. And then our final connector says USB on it. This one also goes into the motherboard. Looks fairly similar to HD audio, but is of course labeled USB, so you should be able to work that one out. I'll tell you what, actually, this is looking pretty sharp. I'm liking what I'm seeing here. It's coming along nicely. At this stage, it doesn't really matter what you plug in next. I'm going to do the graphics card, then probably the power supply and the fans last. I've seen this before in some cheaper cases. You get this weird PCIe slot covers that don't come out. You have to like bend them and break them off. That should slot into place nice and simply, really. Didn't click, but that is definitely in. Make sure that you screw your graphics card nicely and tightly into the slots with the screws that come provided. I'm going to do the fan next, or the fans. And I have noticed, unfortunately, at this stage that I have cocked up a little bit, and I thought there were 3 fans in this box, but I seem to have used one in a different build somewhere, and I don't know where it is. One at the back, and then one in the front. There are quite a few different places I can put this fan. If you're using hard drives and things, then having airflow at the bottom is going to be quite useful. But I want to make sure our graphics card is fed plenty of air, which is why I'm putting it in the middle. I know this fan is super pretty, but make sure you're actually facing this downwards in this chassis because we want it to breathe. And depending on the case you have, it's going to be a slightly different orientation for the power supply. Let's grab our ATX. Plug this in, and then the same with our CPU at the top. Plug our PCIe into the graphics card, and then the final thing that we need to do is plug in this little box here. So this controls all of the Corsair fans. So grab that little SATA connection for the power. Then you need to grab these fans that say 2 RGB hub and plug them in the order you want them to light up in. If you only got 2 fans like we do here, use 1 and 2, don't use like 1 and 5. Check all of your connections that they're actually in properly, so all of the fans are plugged in, the CPU. And a mistake I know a lot of people make is when you get this all plugged in and connected to your monitor, you need to use the ports here, okay? So the HDMI or the display port, don't use the ones on the motherboard, they will not work. So once again, apologies for the mess. I always have to say this, but realistically, I'm not sorry. This is the way I do things. If you want to roll with me in this studio, it's a mess until it's tidy. And of course, you will need a USB drive with a copy of Windows on it, otherwise you will just be using the BIOS for now. So here we go. No sense of drama there, straight in. We've got some lighting coming up. It's looking pretty nice. Interestingly, the fan on the CPU cooler has not come on yet. It was actually really simple. I just didn't plug the fan connection in properly. Remember when I said a second ago about double checking connections? That's a prime example of the sort of thing you're looking for. I should have noticed that. I think the PC is still off. I hope so. Oh, every video. Why? I thought we were out the woods. I thought we were over it, and I just went to go and sit down. That was almost another calamity. Coming up in a hot flush. But here we are anyway, we're in Windows. Very, very simple. If you haven't installed Windows before, you just need to go through all of the steps. This process takes around about 10-15 minutes really, depending on the speed of your drive and the speed of the USB drive you're using. If all of that is super quick, this will be very quick. So I'm gonna leave this for now, go and install some games and come back right at you with the performance. So it is a new day, a new dawn, and new t-shirt, and I'm feeling good. Last build video I did, I didn't show you all of the settings, I didn't record it properly. I'm sorry, but we are remedying our mistakes today. So this is Fortnite, everything is on Epic. Now we have to do the awkward wait while recording for the game to load. Just amuse yourself, really. I don't know, make yourself a cup of tea. That's what we do on this channel. Actually, I have just bought a coffee machine, so make yourself a cup of joe. Boom! So immediately jumping in at the highest resolution we're testing today, which is 3440 by 1440, and you can see we're getting a very respectable frame rate for what is a mid-range PC. We're getting around about the 60 mark. It is fluctuating a little bit, but if you grab yourself like a FreeSync monitor, this will eliminate any stutter that you're going to get. Stepping it down to perhaps a more reasonable resolution for this particular PC, which is 2560 by 1440, so 16 by 9, and you can see we're getting a really nice little frame rate of just shy of 80 FPS. And then of course the most popular resolution, 1080p, and we're getting around about 130 frames a second. Very, very exciting stuff. Oh god, there's actually someone here to shoot. I'm not prepared for this. I'm not prepared for this. Come on, PC, don't let me down. Don't let me down. I've got one. Is the other guy still there? I'm out of ammo, I'm out of ammo, I'm out of ammo, and I'm dead. A game you simply must check out if you haven't already is called Civilization 6, and I imagine a lot of people will be building a PC along these lines for Civilization 6, and this runs like a real dream. So this is 3440 by 1440. Planet Zoo isn't quite as easy to run as Civilization, and we have run into our first game that runs at under 60 frames a second. But remember, this is absolutely everything cranked up at ultra settings, so it is quite intensive. You can see there's a lot of detail there. And if we look at some of the animals, it's just so realistic, it's crazy. Oh god, we have some animals escaping. We've swapped down to 1080p and the animals have not liked that one bit. We have some peacocks roaming about. As long as nothing bigger than that has escaped, we're going to be okay. I mean, I would be quite happy if I was in a zoo and a peacock escaped, but maybe not if it was a very large brown bear or something. Probably the game you guys were waiting for, Call of Duty Modern Warfare Warzone. Once again, this feels really quite smooth actually. There was a little bit of stutter at first as the game does its loading and it sort of preloads the textures and all of that stuff. But otherwise, there's not really anything to complain about. 1440p, we're getting around about 80 frames a second now, which is excellent. 1080p, 120, 130 frames a second. This is going to give you a real competitive edge compared to anyone playing at 60-ish. Okay, the wall of gas is getting me now. The wall of gas, I was too busy talking to the camera, being too professional. This is what I give up for you guys. It's going to ruin my stats. But 120 to 130 frames a second wouldn't do. So then, this has been the i5 Gaming PC 2020 with a brand new Core i5 10600K. Let me know your thoughts. Would you go for this particular CPU? Do you like the case, the graphics, anything really in the PC? I'd be really interested to hear from you. As always, my Amazon affiliate links are listed down below if you want to check out current pricing, and they're global, so they should work in your region as well. And of course, while you're down there, don't forget to check out the Asus ROG Theta. This incredible headset offers true 7.1 surround sound in a cozy and comfortable package. 8 individual drivers give you the surround sound that you've been dreaming of. And thanks to the epic AI noise cancelling microphone, you can record and communicate with confidence. Get ahead of the game today with the ROG Theta. Grab yours with the link located down below. Don't be afraid to smash that like button if you've enjoyed it. It really does help out, you wouldn't believe. Of course, get subscribed for more builds like this. If you want to see me do anything differently, then please let me know down in that comment section below. We're always trying to make these videos better and better. And if you do want to see my i9 build or my ITX build, I'll leave both of these in the end screen. Thank you so much for checking out this video, to everyone that supplied parts for it, and I'll see you in the next one.